Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Common Caveat. I'm your host, Matt.Sabatine. If you enjoy the mysteries of faith and science, then join me as we explore Jesus Christ and his relevance to consciousness, culture, psychobiology, and spiritual experiences. Today, I want to delve into this fascinating world of near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. This is part 2 in a series of videos. You can find part 1 in my last video titled From Death to DMT, unpacking the science of near-death experiences and psychedelics. In this video, I'll touch on the work of Dr. Bruce Greyson, who became a pioneering researcher in the field at a time when it was absolutely taboo to even mention the topic. Lastly, you will see how this strongly relates to 2 Corinthians 5, 6 through 8, that says, "So we are always confident, knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. We are confident, yes, well pleased, rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord." From henceforth, near-death experiences will be abbreviated as NDEs, and I will abbreviate out-of-body experiences as OBEs. So, let's get into it. Near-death experiences are strange. When hearing about them in passing, it is easy to write them off as hallucinations or detachments from reality. In light of treating them as a type of hallucination, I always assumed that no one having an OBE could give an accurate account of what was happening in his or her surrounding environment during the experience. That is contradicted by Dr. Bruce Greyson's words on page 72 of his book titled After, A Doctor Explores What Near-Death Experiences Reveal About Life and Beyond. He states, "Counseling professor Jan Holden reviewed 93 reports of out-of-body perceptions during NDEs. She found that 92% were completely accurate, 6% contained some error, and only 1% were completely erroneous." I can respect the skeptic who might scoff that those numbers are too high, but I also do not want to be misled by a question that can easily turn into an unverified assumption. Dr. Bruce Greyson attributes those numbers to the Handbook of Near-Death Experiences, where Janice Miner Holden writes in Chapter 9, titled Veridical Perception in Near-Death Experiences. The materialistic model is correct on NDEs and OBEs at all. We should be completely unable to find any veridicality or statements corresponding with reality among OBE perceptions. Still, on page 72, Greyson quotes William James, who is dubbed as the father of American psychology. "If you wish to upset the law that all crows are black, you mustn't seek to show that no crows are. It is enough if you prove one single crow to be white." This relates to the principle of falsifiability that was championed by Karl Popper. It also reminds me of David Hume's problem of induction. We may repeatedly observe a population of things having the same characteristics, for instance, black crows, but we should never rule out the possibility of a single exception, for instance, a white crow. Once we witness that single exception, we refute the universality of the rule, for example, all crows are black. Inductive inferences are useful to the limited extent that the future resembles the past. Natural laws and regularities can have uniformity, but not forever. Eventually, things change. The use of observed things cannot guarantee incontrovertible predictions about unobserved things, no matter how plausible our predictions seem. The problem of induction haunts the materialistic and naturalistic assumption that no one can have veridical OBE perceptions. As I already said above, if the materialistic model is correct on NDEs and OBEs at all, we should be completely unable to find any veridicality among OBE perceptions. If the brain produces conscious experience, and the brain's sensory and perceptual apparatus is dying during an NDE, the eyes and ears should be less receptive to outside stimuli. That is what the philosophies of materialism and naturalism should entail. But the experiencers see and hear a lot of things according to NDE data. They see and hear things very vividly, in fact. Everything intensifies instead of doing the opposite. In 2015, Greyson authored the open access report titled Western Scientific Approaches to Near-Death Experiences. There, he states that most NDEers hold the conviction that the palpable feeling of leaving their bodies gave them a peek into what, quote, post-mortem consciousness might be like. Patients have been able to accurately account for what happened in the external environment during their, quote, out-of-body spatial perspective. Greyson admits that maybe the accurate accounts from the patients could have been ensured by scanning and remembering their environment before becoming unconscious, or by simply making lucky and astute guesses about things that commonly occur. However, Greyson counters that idea by mentioning, quote, 2 extensive controlled studies involving patients accurately accounting for distinct and unforeseeable things occurring while getting resuscitated, which had to be things not of any interest to the patients before becoming unconscious. The patients who reported NDEs were able to provide accurate accounts, while those who reported no NDEs could not make accurate accounts. Greyson's 2 sources for that are, number 1, Michael Sabom's Recollections of Death, subtitled A Medical Investigation, and number 2, Penny Sartori's work titled The Near-Death Experiences of Hospitalized Intensive Care Patients, subtitled A 5-Year Clinical Study. Some experiencers have reported perceptions that go beyond the capacity of their usual sensory organs while in the operating room. One example is a case of a man who said he was floating in the operating room and could see many things that were specifically done to him by multiple medical staff in the intensive therapy unit, or the ITU. The medical team was able to substantiate what he said and made a verbatim written report titled A Prospectively Studied Near-Death Experience with Corroborated Out-of-Body Perceptions and Unexplained Healing, of which Penny Sartori was a part. The man described this experience to be painless and enjoyable as he saw his father and mother-in-law standing close to, quote, a gentleman with long black hair, which needed to be combed. I don't know who he was, maybe Jesus, but this chap had long black scruffy hair that needed combing. The only thing nice about him was his eyes were drawing you to him. The eyes were piercing. It was his eyes. When I went to look at my father, it was drawing with his eyes as well, as if I could see them both at the same time. A pleasant experience that involves being drawn to a spiritual entity contradicts the typically fearful messages we receive from pop culture and movies that describe death as such a horrifyingly final experience. That seems to be compatible with Bruce Greyson's 2015 report saying that some parts of people's near-death experiences may be shaped by cultural influences, but the core features remain consistent worldwide. This could be attributable to common mental reactions, brain activities, or even a real contact with an otherworldly hereafter. The after effects of NDEs are deeply meaningful and extensive for every experiencer, in spite of the various causes and interpretations that can be said about them, and the unpredictability of NDEs that make them difficult to scientifically study. The experiencer is significantly changed with respect to having a greater emphasis on spirituality, a greater compassion for others, a greater gratitude for life, and a diminished fear of death and competitiveness. The experiencers perceive themselves to be vital members of a universe operating on benevolence and purpose. Such significant changes are likelier among those who report NDEs versus those that report no NDEs after surviving, quote, close brushes with death, in conclusion, I just want to say that if profound peace, unconditional love, and bliss are common among NDEs, it makes sense to me that 2 Corinthians 5:6-8 would say we are well pleased rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Stay tuned for part 3 on this topic of near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. It was a pleasure having you today. Please subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and hit the bell. I greatly appreciate it. God bless you, and may the peace of our Lord Jesus Christ keep you. Have a good day.